All right, thanks for joining me. I know this time slot after lunch on the last day of the conference is a tough one, but we'll get through it together. And I want to say thank you to Asia for Animals and Sarawak SPCA for the opportunity to be part of this conference agenda. So I'm with the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, or GFAS, and I'll be talking about ways that sanctuaries can create change for animals. And to give a little context to my presentation, I'm first going to tell you just a little bit about GFAS. I can click. There we are. So we are a nonprofit, and our mission can be summed up by the words helping sanctuaries to help animals. And we work with animal sanctuaries worldwide, primarily with our sanctuary accreditation program, but also other education and capacity building programs for sanctuaries. And currently there's more than 200 sanctuaries in 18 countries that have been certified by GFAS. Now, when we use the term sanctuary at GFAS, we have a very broad definition, and that's a definition that I'll be using in this presentation. Our definition covers not only wildlife, but also farmed animal sanctuaries, equine sanctuaries, and not only animals in lifetime care, but those that might be in a short-term or long-term rehab setting, such as many of the wildlife centers we know. Our definition will also, in some instances, cover rescues that have certain animals, like horses or farmed animals, that may be adopted to members of the public who will give them a lifetime home and care. So when we learned that the theme of this year's conference was education and engagement bring change, we thought it was an opportunity to highlight some of the great work that our sanctuaries do. But as we started thinking about this theme, we wondered, what does this mean? For example, what is engagement? It can cover so many different types of activities, and what kind of change are we talking about? So we decided first to ask our sanctuary members what they thought. We sent out a survey, and we interviewed a number of our sanctuaries, and the respondents and those who participated did include wildlife, equine, and farm on several continents, and we learned a lot from them. So first we looked at the various ways that sanctuaries are engaging with the public. And not surprisingly, just about everyone engaged on social media, almost 100%. It makes sense. This is a free or maybe low-cost way to reach people across the world that may not be close to your facility. Many of them had a volunteer program. Somewhat fewer offered tours, and there was a difference here between different species. I think all of the farmed animal sanctuaries who responded gave regular tours, less so for the wildlife centers. Makes sense when you consider location or risks of being around potentially dangerous animals or preparing animals for release. Far fewer of the respondents engaged in what we would consider traditional advocacy, such as communicating with or lobbying with government authorities or circulating petition. And you can see those percentages there, 40% and 25%. But within the various activities described to us, we found some amazing creativity in ways that sanctuaries were creating active engagement for programs for children and adults. So first I'll talk about Pasato's Safe Haven. This is a farmed animal sanctuary in the U.S. located in Washington State, and they engage with the public in many different ways. They have tours, they do classroom visits. They also work with local law enforcement to educate them on how to identify animal cruelty. But another brilliant program that they launched at the beginning of the COVID pandemic was their Pasato's Pen Pal program. And this allows kids, or even adults, to write a letter to a sanctuary animal that they had learned about online or through a classroom program, and the animal will send a letter back. Now, I think it's actually the staff writing the letter back, but you get the idea. And the letter we see here is a letter that one child wrote to Harvey the rooster. Now, Pasato's has gotten thousands of letters, and not just in the U.S., but from countries including Singapore, Italy, and Ireland. And their observation is that this simple activity allows a connection to animals, to see the animals differently and maybe see them as friends. And this connection is the first step to seeing those much larger issues, such as the root causes that bring animals into sanctuary in the first place. Okay, I think we all know that Animals Asia engages with the public in so many ways, and it has made a tremendous impact in Asia. But it's made impact in smaller ways as well. And at their sanctuary in Chengdu, they created a board game called Moonbear's Great Adventure. Now, this is a role-playing exercise that teaches important information without having to have any bear on site or involved in any way. So with each roll of the dice, the children get to learn key facts about moon bears, their habitat, their behavior, their food, and even the role that humans have played. And the goal here of this game is to infuse that sense of respect for moon bears, a sense of respect for all lives, to foster harmony between humans and the natural environment. Again, trying to make that connection, and through that change in knowledge and attitude, hopefully there'll be a lasting change in behavior. Okay. We wanted to understand what the sanctuaries thought was the type of experience they saw making the greatest impact. And as the two examples I described suggest, the most popular choice across sanctuaries, regardless of species, regardless of location, was stories. Stories about why a certain animal is at the sanctuary, and stories about that animal as an individual. What is their behavior? What is their personality? The sanctuaries thought this made it greater impact than, for example, sharing data and statistics, like how many of a species remain in the wild or how many animals are in factory farms. And they thought it made a greater impact than discussions of animal protection laws. And we spoke with some of the sanctuaries to learn more about why they thought this was. Now, Arcus is a wildlife center in Guatemala, in Central America, and it has some animals in lifetime care, but many more that are rehabbed for what will hopefully be a release to the wild. And a large number of their animals are confiscated from the wildlife trade, primarily birds like macaws, primates, but they have other mammals and reptiles as well. And they bring this information about their work to thousands each year at their education center in Petin. Visitors walk through the problem. They will first learn about Guatemala's rich biodiversity. They'll see some of the lifetime sanctuary residents, and they'll hear stories about the animals. And the way Arcus explained it to me, Arcus believes sanctuaries have a unique role. They are in a unique position to share this information because they're not just relaying a story, they're not just telling some story, but they're telling it firsthand. They are part of the story of how that animal was rescued and came to the facility, and they are part of the story of what that animal's future is going to be. And so there's this sense of realness and sincerity in the storytelling. Now, Arcus faces a lot of challenges in this country beyond the illegal wildlife trade, and their goal is to create a sense of empathy and communion with wildlife so people will see them as a partner and not as the enemy. Another one of our farmed animal sanctuaries, Farm-a-Stay Animal Sanctuary in the U.S. And they said storytelling is also really important for them. Now, this sanctuary is located in a part of the country that's really the heart of the animal agriculture industry. So many who visit the sanctuary have already been to commercial farms, and they may have set ideas about these animals, that these farm animals are commodities. You really can't tell two pigs apart. And when they hear stories about animals as individuals, like sister pigs Phoebe and Charlotte here, their eyes open. Now, I hear one of these pigs is very outgoing, one is very shy. You can tell them apart. They have different personalities. They are individuals. And stories about the animal's behavior, how they form friendships, how they grieve the loss of a companion, can allow people to see animals differently. And we've heard this theme in the presentations over the past few days, like Dave Neal's plenary talk about understanding animal capacities for welfare, or the discussion of animal photojournalism that We Animals Media presented that emphasizes the impact of images of animals looking directly into the camera so that you can see their individuality. And Pharma's Day believes these stories of individuality in combination with information about what these animals' lives would be like if they were not in sanctuary is a powerful motivator of change. All right. So some of the sanctuaries we talked to take steps to try to measure change and evaluate their work, such as surveys of visitors after a tour. But even with that data, it's hard to know if there's long-term change. And most agreed that change is one step at a time, small things at a time making a big impact, and leading one step at a time to a larger lasting change. We spoke with Colorado Horse Rescue, and they told me a story and called this the butterfly effect. Now, this is the story of Hansel, a miniature horse you see here, who came into the rescue. And when he came in, one of the volunteers there saw him. Now, through her experience, she had gained knowledge, and she understood that as a matter of welfare, these animals need companionship. She also had a friend with a miniature donkey who had just lost a companion. So the result, her friend adopted Hansel, he went home, and you can see the two of them together in that picture. So the butterfly effect, one little change can create lots of other changes. The volunteer gained knowledge. The friend's donkey got a new companion. Hansel got a new home. And just as important, when Hansel left the rescue, it opened up a spot. So there was the possibility of another animal coming in and being rescued. Each small change led to another, and all of those small changes mattered. All right. So we asked sanctuaries to describe in their own words the change they seek to make. And while, of course, there are different desired outcomes, such as no more wild animals as pets, or greater conservation efforts, or changing your food behaviors and becoming vegan, the word that came up again and again was compassion. And I guess that's not surprising. And again, I've reflected on what we all have listened to over the past few days, beginning with Jill Robinson's statement that if we are kind, we cannot be cruel. The sanctuary saw compassion as the starting point, and that ability to inspire a connection to animals so people will see them differently and will understand them can lead to greater change. But of course, there are challenges, and we asked the sanctuaries what they saw as the biggest challenge to creating the change they desire. No surprise, lack of funding and other resources was by far the most frequent response. But we also got other responses. Reaching a larger audience is a challenge. Having to confront traditions and cultural norms. Public ignorance or just resistance to learning and changing. Lack of government support or lack of government will for change, lack of good animal protection laws, and having to strike a balance between engaging the public, maybe bringing them on site, and not compromising animal welfare. And of course, there was the challenge of determining whether those engagements that may be just for short term, with someone coming on a tour or engaging online, is that making a change in them? So we decided to do another survey, and this time we asked the public, and we received 349 responses. I was holding out for 350 before it closed, but we got 349. But it was across continents and across age ranges, so a lot of diversity in there. And the first question we asked is, what do you think is the most important role an animal sanctuary can play? And again, we told them what our broad definition of sanctuary is. We gave them a long list of choices or the option to write in something. And just about everyone, almost just under 95%, said giving a home for animals in need was the most important thing. But around 3/4 also agreed that sanctuaries should be educators. They should educate the public about the reason animal sanctuaries are needed. And they should educate the public about the ways that people can make behavior changes that will have a positive impact on animals. Okay. About 90% of the survey respondents had visited some kind of sanctuary or rescue. It might have even been a companion animal rescue. But we wanted to know what that visit inspired them to do. Did that make an attitude change or behavior change? Now, just over 70% said they made a donation, which is great because we know what that great challenge is to making change. But just over half also volunteered as a result of that experience. And 35% engaged in some kind of advocacy for animals. And just over a quarter made changes to their tourism choices to make more ethical choices that don't exploit animals. And we even asked this question to those whose main engagement with sanctuaries was online, following them on social media, although they might never have visited a sanctuary. And just about as many had made a donation, around 70%, and even more of them, nearly half, had signed a petition or otherwise advocated for animals. All right. We asked the members of the public, write down in your own words how sanctuary engagement has changed you. Behavior changes, attitude changes, and the responses were pretty overwhelming and very emotional. Some explained that they had made changes to their diet or changes to their purchases. They were avoiding palm oil, they became vegan, cut dairy or meat. Some had made career choices. They were inspired to become veterinarians or to enter the conservation field. Several of them talked about how this knowledge had empowered them. I know more so I can advocate and educate more. I'm more outspoken about the need for animal protection laws. It made me want to become more involved. And interestingly, a number of them talked about how it had changed them as people. I feel like a kinder and more compassionate person. Quite apart from the animal advocacy work or what they were doing to help animals, they felt like they had become better people. Okay. And so this quote sums up what we've learned. Knowledge is power. Oops, and you don't see it. There you go. Knowledge is power, and animals cannot advocate for themselves. Sanctuaries build communities that surpass the boundaries of age, socioeconomic status, and education level by forming a common ground between people and animals. They provide a voice for the voiceless and fill a need for both animals and the humans that care for them. And I don't know who wrote this. This was an anonymous survey response, but I'd love to meet them and thank them for that. And there's still much we can take from what we've learned in these surveys and what our next steps are. How sanctuaries can use storytelling in their communications, in their advocacy, even in their fundraising. How can sanctuaries best give opportunities for the public to make that connection with animals that will inspire compassion and lead to that next change? And at GFES, one of our next steps is to work with our sanctuaries and create some basic monitoring and evaluation tools for the programs they have. But we do know that sanctuaries have a very powerful and unique voice, and they are making change in those who meet them, and those people will carry on that change to others. So thank you very much, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Jackie. Now we will